Welcome back, everyone. It's time for another edition of Entertainment Exposed, our podcast with our special correspondent, Mr. David Reddish, in studio with me. David, how are you, sir?
Hello, Scott. I'm doing all right. I'm getting along in this crazy, crazy world. What more could I ask for?
We are recording this 2 days after the election, so everything is topsy turvy, upside down. We're all having
Yeah,
feelings, we're all having things going on. So we're going to power through the best we can today. But I think it's been all over the internet where they say artists are the ones that get us through these times, right? So I think we need to commit to the artists out there that are going to hopefully get us through these next 4 years.
I mean, we're going to do our best. Speaking as an artist and a journalist, we're all going to do our best. We're going to try. But the good news is, I have some great stuff to talk about today.
I'm excited. I know you got some plays happening in LA. You got some inside scoop, as you always do on so many things. Where are we going to go on today's edition of Entertainment Exposed?
So I thought this would be fun. Last night I attended the Los Angeles opening of Back to the Future, the musical. Now, this is the new musical played on Broadway and in London to a great reception. It's based on the movie Back to the Future, and it is a full on musical. I was very excited to see it. You know, I grew up on that movie. I love it so much. It was very exciting because Robert Zemeckis, who directed the movie, Bob Gale, who wrote the movie, Alan Silvestri, who wrote the music to the movie, and Leah Thompson, who played Lorraine in the movie, among many other folks associated with it, all showed up to the premiere. They came on stage and took a bow as well with the
Oh, that's
cast. That was pretty special. It was pretty cool to see. It felt pretty good. But the musical itself, I mean, it is Back to the Future. They've made some alterations to it. And I suppose it wouldn't surprise anybody to learn the real star of the show is the DeLorean itself. It appears in what seems to be a life size model. It's pretty close. And it does all kinds of cool time travel tricks, including flying, because I know you're wondering. And it's, I have to say, the special effects in general for Back to the Future, the musical, are probably the best I've ever seen on stage. I've seen Wicked,
really?
I've seen Phantom, I've seen Miss Saigon, all the big effects shows. This is pretty awesome with what they do. They also do a very smart thing, which is they use Alan Silvestri's score quite a bit. The score, of course, to Back to the Future is iconic, and it's so closely associated with the movie. So to add some lyrics to that score was a good idea. Unfortunately, the score on the whole, all the new songs are pretty rough. If I'm being honest, they're not very good. There are maybe two and a half good songs in the entire show. One of them is called Gotta Start Somewhere, and it's sung by the character Goldie Wilson. If you remember the first movie, he's the guy that grows up to be the mayor of Hill Valley. And he has this awesome banger number. Carter East Tucker, who plays him in the tour, has an amazing voice. He has a great stage presence. It's one of the highlights of the night. Really brings a lot of energy to the show that it kind of needs at that point. And the other in Act Two is performed by Doc. It's called For the Dreamers, and it's a ballad about him being an inventor and paying tribute to all the inventors that inspired him over his life and career. Don Stevenson, who's a fairly well-known Broadway and television actor.
Right.
He's done Law and Order. He was on Another World. You would probably recognize him if you saw him. He plays Doc Brown, and he gives it his all. And it's probably the most moving moment of the night. Is when he performs this beautiful ballad song For the Dreamers. There's also a love duet between Marty and his girlfriend Jennifer that's staged pretty well. That uses some of the melody of Alan Silvestri's score. But it's also an original song and isn't really that great, and it doesn't really further the plot that much. In fact, that's kind of an overarching issue with the show in general. It's a lot of music. It's got to be something like 30 songs, but none of them are that great. A lot of big song and dance numbers, and it's like, okay, but this isn't moving the plot along. This is just a lot of song and dance and cool visual stuff. So they sort of struggle with that through the whole show. So I have to say, the performers give the show their all. They do the best with what they've been given. So Don Stevenson, who I mentioned who plays Doc, he works very hard. Kaden Barash, I believe is how you say his name. He plays Marty. He is a fine singer. He has a lot of energy, and he does a lot of physical stunt work in the show, riding the skateboard, climbing up and down lockers, lots of fist fights with Biff Tannen. And all of that is executed beautifully. The problem is it's almost like a cartoon parody of the movie. All the actors are trying to sort of channel the actors from the movie and play the characters the same way. But one of the things that's great about Back to the Future, the movie, is as funny as it is and as silly as it can be, all those actors play those characters straight and they make them into real people. That's part of why people respond to the movie as well as they do and for as long as they have. People love those characters because there's just something really human and really real about them.
Mm.
You don't really get that in the musical. It's much more, it's sort of like if you go to a theme park and you see Spider-Man the musical or, Beauty and the Beast on stage, and it's sort of a 20-minute version of the movie where there are costume characters running around and they might sing one or two songs from it. It feels a lot closer to that than a traditional musical, in my opinion, in my experience. That's not to say it isn't a fun night. There were obviously a lot of people that loved the movie who were there. It was a packed show last night. It seemed like they were selling a lot of merchandise, a lot of Back to the Future stuff, and who can blame them there? There's a demand for it.
Right.
In my opinion, it's sort of a mixed bag. But if you really love Back to the Future and if you want to see some really cool stuff on stage, you
Okay.
absolutely should check
Yeah.
it out. This tour it started in Cleveland, and I know it's going to end in Toronto in August of next year. It plays here in Los Angeles through December 1st at the Pantages Theater. From there, I know they go to Eugene, Seattle, Denver, San Francisco, and Dallas. Our listeners should check out the Back to the Future the Musical official site to see a full list of cities and dates. It's definitely worth seeing just for the spectacle of it, and it's a fun time at the theater.
I love seeing things at the Pantages. They usually have it's a great open space to do a lot of those technical things, and so I can
Yeah.
imagine it had to look fantastic. So that is great. Did
Yes.
you said that the stars were there for the premiere night? Did they do any kind of a talk back or just walk a red carpet, or what did they do?
They So Bob Gale, who produced and wrote the movie, came out and introduced the members of the cast and the crew that had joined that night. Everyone from Marty's stunt double in the original movie to Leah Thompson, who I mentioned, and Robert Zemeckis, who directed. They said, there was a great future for Back to the Future, that they were so glad everybody was there. No doubt, because they're all going to get paid, residuals because of
Right.
this. But yeah, I mean, there was not anything more than that. There was a private reception, I know, afterwards for just the cast of the show and the cast of the movie and the crew to sort of mingle. But part of what makes Los Angeles so awesome is that these people will show up to the show,
Right.
and you never know who you're going to see in the audience or on stage. And in fact, last night Bob Gale arrived in the DeLorean. I don't mean a DeLorean.
Wow.
I mean the
Wow.
DeLorean from the movie, all souped up with the coils and the lights and the everything. Rolled up to the Pantages and climbed out of it. God bless him. It was the kind of thing you only see in Hollywood. I said to my date, "Oh, look, someone's in the DeLorean." And he was like, "What?" And I'm like, "Look, that DeLorean right there." And he was like, "Oh my God, it's like the real DeLorean." I said, "Yes, it is. That's why it's cool." So it was also cool to see it at the Pantages because they shot and recorded all the music to the movie within just a couple miles, or even a couple doors down. Alan Silvestri recorded the orchestra
Right.
for the score for the original movies right there on Hollywood Boulevard. So it was a special thing to see in Los Angeles. And like I say, they do a lot with the effects that make it pretty cool and make it feel very, I guess, specific to the city that you're in. It's really fun that way.
Right. They filmed the Back to the Future 3 right around the corner from where I was living in Port Hueneme, Oxnard. And my brother at the time, my younger brother,
Yeah,
was going to college, and that's how he made money going through college. Was he was atmosphere background in a lot of movies. He'd go and do that on his off days from work. So he got to do background for Back to the Future, and that part where the train runs over the car, right? Back to the Future 3, where the train
yeah.
that was right around the corner from where I lived. So he got to go to that. We had a lot of
Wow.
autographs back in the day, and I don't even have them anymore. But it was a fun time when they were filming that movie. I remember getting to see a lot of them.
I, those are wonderful movies, and I'd rather have them do a musical version of the movie than try and do a fourth movie or a reboot or
Yes,
something. It's like some things are sacred. Let's let it be. Like
exactly.
leave it where it is. It's great. Speaking of movie musicals and Hollywood, I'm excited to go to New York next week. I'll be seeing the new production of Sunset Boulevard on Broadway,
Wow.
which is kind of ironic because I was driving down Sunset Boulevard last night thinking about, oh, I'm about to go see Sunset Boulevard next week. This is, of course, the Jamie Lloyd directed production starring Nicole Scherzinger of the Pussycat Dolls fame. It's gotten rave reviews. My friend Hugh McIntyre, who's a music writer for Forbes, said that it was possibly the best thing he'd ever seen on stage. My friends who are Broadway actors, who are techies that work in the business, all say you have to see it. It's incredible. She's a revelation. That it's amazing. Sunset Boulevard is one of my favorite Andrew Lloyd Webber musicals, so I'm excited to see it and excited to see some of the cool things that they do with it. In case you are unfamiliar or our listeners are unfamiliar, it's done with a bare stage. There's no set. Everyone wears black, and it's very, very minimalist. But there is a movie screen because it's about a movie star. There's a movie screen, and they do lots of cool things with the screen and her character. And supposedly, it's just very, very haunting and very, very frightening in places. So, one friend of mine said it's the best thing on Broadway in 25 years. So I can't wait to go see if he's correct. I'll, of course, be able to report on that next time I'm on the show. So I'm excited to share that with everybody. And also, speaking of musicals and movies, I'm sure all our listeners are geared up for a little movie called Wicked that comes out on November 22nd, later this month.
Fellow Ozians, the Wicked Witch of the West is dead.
Don't let her get away!
Let me tell you the whole story. Our paths did cross. At school. Oh, you're green.
I am.
Together we're unlimited. She had her secrets.
Absolutely remarkable.
There is no fight we cannot win. Just you and I defying gravity.
Why is it you're always causing some sort of commotion?
I don't cause commotions, I am one. Some of us are just different.
Listen to me. You can do anything.
I know.
All aboard the Emerald City!
Just follow the road. It's gonna lead you right to me. The best way to bring folks together is to give them a real good enemy.
This wicked witch.
Don't be afraid. It's the wizard who should be afraid of me.
The wizard that there is or was is ever gonna bring me
Are you a big Wicked fan, Scott? Are you looking forward
I
to
am
this?
looking forward to it. I was having a conversation with someone about this the other day, though, and tell me what your thoughts are. First, Sunset Boulevard. I can't wait to hear all about it. And if you have the time while you're in New York, Death Becomes Her is supposed to be just as good, if not better. So, Death Becomes Her is the hot ticket in town with Sunset Boulevard. While you're there, lie, cheat, and steal your way into the theater, and I think you're going to enjoy every second of it. Megan Hilty, amazing job. Just great. So have fun in New York. I can't wait. I want text messages along the way, and then we'll talk about it next time. But yeah, Wicked, I want to hear your thought on this because I am really looking forward to it. They just had their big premiere in Australia, and I had some friends in Australia go to it. They're getting ready to do a London one very soon. But the thing that I found interesting, besides Jonathan Bailey's Fierro number, they're not promoting this as a musical. There's not much music in any of the promos that you see. If you watch the trailer, if you watch everything, you would be hard pressed to know this is a musical, and this is chock full of songs. So I'm very surprised
Yeah.
at the marketing of it. What are your thoughts on that?
I mean, that's a great question. I guess it doesn't really surprise me that they're sort of playing a little coy about it. I know. So if you know what Wicked is, you're going to know it's a musical automatically.
Right.
I think they're appealing to people that may not be big thespians. They may not know the show very well. They're promoting it as a big fantasy epic, which it is.
Right.
That's not deceptive. And you do hear songs and singing from the soundtrack in the trailer. I think the reason they're maybe hiding the fact that it's a musical, quote unquote, or they're maybe downplaying that in marketing materials, is because there have been some big flop musicals recently.
True.
Mean Girls or Dear Evan Hansen, that everybody knew were going to be big musicals, and so audience stayed away in droves.
Right.
I think there are other reasons besides them being musicals that they flopped, and I'll talk about that in a little bit in a second. There are a few things I want to say about that, but I think it's more just they want to appeal to the broadest possible audience. We hear that all the time in marketing groups,
Right.
so they're maybe downplaying it a little bit. Like I say, anyone who knows what Wicked is, they're going to know it's a musical, and so they're going to show up anyway. It opens the 22nd, and you're right. There have been a few screenings. There was the big Australian premiere. So far, reactions have been overwhelmingly positive, including from Kristen Chenoweth, the original Glenda.
Right.
She talked about how much she enjoyed it. Others, I know Deadline Hollywood and IndieWire both praised it. But the thing about these early screenings and these sort of premieres that I want to stress to you and our audience, those audiences are very cultivated. They are handpicked by the studio and by the marketing people because they know they will get a certain reaction.
Right.
From them. They know they can spin, okay, the movie is great, everybody's loving it. Whether or not that's really true, if they wanted to really get a read on it, they would have premiered it at the Toronto Film Festival or in Venice,
Right.
someplace where there are going to be lots of press people, there are going to be lots of industry people that love social media, they love to tweet about things. We saw that with Dear Evan Hansen when it premiered up at the Toronto Film Festival, and I guess 2021 or whatever that would have been.
21.
And of course, that movie was a huge bomb and it was a disaster. And I'll get to that again in a second. Because I'm hoping that we can avoid some of those pitfalls. Cynthia Erivo and Ariana Grande, who play the two leads, are of course amazing, amazing singers. Cynthia Erivo, I can't wait to hear her rendition of some of those songs because that woman just has pipes for days. Like incredible, incredible singer, great actress. Ariana, not known for being an actress, but she is trained. We'll see how she does. I know she had a lot of competition for that part, namely Amanda Seyfried. This is an Emmy winner, a major star, an Oscar-nominated actress, and Ariana Grande still got the part over her, which I think is very, very intriguing. I think the other thing that everyone's sort of preoccupied with is supposedly it's 2.5 hours, and it's only the first half of the show. So Wicked on Broadway, I think the whole show runs about 2.5, 3 hours.
Right.
So that opens up some questions as to, well, what did they add? And it's not really clear yet what's been added, what subplots they've added, what elements from the original novel, which is considerably different from the musical, what elements they've sort of brought back. But at the same time, as someone who's seen Wicked on stage and basically enjoyed it for what it was, it has major, major problems, especially in the second act, where it's like they just kind of give up on a plot. There will be characters that come out and give a 10-minute monologue that explains what's happening, what has happened, what's about to happen, where we are, what's going on. And then there'll be a little song and dance number, and then someone else will come out on the other side of the stage and deliver another 5-minute monologue talking about what just happened and where are we going. It's like they had so much ground to cover, they didn't quite know how to do it. So the fact that it's 2 movies, I know is controversial among fans of the musical. It gives me hope that they've been able to smooth over some of these narrative problems, and especially when we get Wicked Part 2 later next year, it will have fleshed things out a little bit better. And my personal hope is that they go back to some of the darker and more adult religious and sexual themes that were very, very prominent in the novel that were left out of the musical. That's probably too much to hope for, frankly, but we'll see. I think it's interesting, going back to are they downplaying the fact that it's a musical? Yeah, they certainly are. But I think that's also because Broadway adaptations to movies have always been a mixed bag, but that's particularly true in recent years. For every Hairspray or Chicago that you get, Chicago, of course, was a smash movie and is still considered a modern classic. Dreamgirls, another. These movies won Academy
Right.
Awards. They were big hits. You also end up with Into the Woods, which was basically well received, but didn't really do that well in terms of business. Sweeney Todd, which I thought was terrific, but kind of flopped, like in terms of budget, in terms of how much it cost versus how much it made. And then you get Dear Evan Hansen, which is probably not as bad as its reputation would lead you to believe, but is highly problematic. It's a deeply flawed movie because I think it's based on a deeply flawed show. I think it probably won the Tony for Best Musical, not because it was a great show or because it had a great score. In fact, I think the score is terrible. It has like this shrill, shrieking quality to it that when you see it on stage, it's like, wow, look at the vocal acrobatics that these actors are able to do. But in a movie where everything's pre-recorded anyway, it's sort of like, okay, can we tone it back? Can we tone it back just a little bit? Like I'm getting a headache from this. My ears are going to bleed. Lots of really shrill, shrieking kind of singing. And of course, we have to mention in the Dear Evan Hansen movie, Ben Platt, who got rave reviews and won a Tony for his stage performance, recreated his performance in the movie. And people talked about how he looked like Methuselah. He looked like he was 500
Little long
years
in the
old.
tooth, yeah.
And see, it's funny, Scott, because we look at a movie like Grease. Like, people love the musical movie Grease, right? And those actors were in their mid-30s playing 16 and 17-year-olds. I think where they screwed up in Dear Evan Hansen, I'm actually fine with bringing Ben Platt back. But the problem is you have to cast people around him that will not make him look old. And what they did in the movie was they cast Caitlin Dever, they cast Nick Dodani, Amanda Lestenberg, some great young actors who were actually 18 years old. And they look 18 years old. And compared to that, even though maybe, in a vacuum, Ben Platt could pass for 18, or if he's surrounded by other people in their mid-20s, he would not stand out so much. But he really strikes a contrast with his co-stars, and that makes for a really distracting kind of musical experience. The other thing about Dear Evan Hansen is I think it's about a reprehensible character, and the movie certainly never addresses the fact that what he's doing is entirely selfish. And okay, you can write it off as he's socially awkward and on the spectrum, but the fact of the matter is it doesn't excuse anything that he does. So hopefully when it comes back to Wicked, we will not see that kind of reaction to it. Hopefully they found ways to make it work, make it interesting, make it into the big fantasy epic that it has every potential to be, on par with The Wizard of Oz or Lord of the Rings or Harry Potter. We'll see. I'm seeing it, I guess, on November 17th. So you'll get a full review from me for CBR, where I'm authority critic. You'll get the full review from me that week, and I can't wait to talk about it more then.
I'm excited for it. And like you said, I mean, I know that these pre-screenings are very effusive and everything, and industry people that they know is going to be good. But I mean, there's people saying Oscar-worthy performances, and that's usually not said. They don't try to go overboard. But these people are really kind of praising this up. So it's going to be interesting to see if it lives up to it, because there's a lot of hype, but you have some talent. So I don't know. And it's going to be fun to see those people that aren't expecting it to be a two-parter. We've talked about that a few times before. They're going to it and say, they've never really talked about where they're going to stop it and how it's going to go. It's going to be very interesting to see where it goes. Where do they decide to end part one and go to part two? Because that's going to see where they're going to add it. They're going to add it. I mean, there's lots of ways it can go. So I'm very interested in it. I'm invested already. So it will be fun.
We'll talk about it then. So that's what I've got for this week. Will everybody take care out there? I know it's scary.
I love a good theater review. You know me, I'm a Broadway boy at heart. So thank you for sharing those with me and our audience, of course. David's going to be here at the end of the month. We're going to talk about these shows and all sorts of other fun things with David. We appreciate you tuning in to Entertainment Exposed twice a month here on Left is Straight Podcast. David, remind everyone where they can follow you around social media, because you are plugged in so well and just have a great finger on the pulse.
Yes, I am. You can follow me on Instagram, the Gay Magneto, like all one word, like Magneto from the X-Men. You'll find me there, and you'll be able to keep up on some of my activities and exploits. You can also find all my written work on Muckrack. So if you're interested in some of my written reviews, please, by all means, check them out, like them, share them, discuss. I can't wait to hear what all of you think.
There you go. 4 amazing books you have to check out and get for us. Guys, we appreciate you tuning in to
Yes.
Entertainment Exposed right here on Left to Straight Podcast. Have a great rest of your week, everyone. Bye-bye.